Okay, so what kind of work would you actually do in the consulting space? Now, before we go into those details, you need to understand that as a PharmD or a pharmacy professional, your distinct advantage lies in your clinical fluency because you understand the disease states, the patient outcomes, the mechanism of action, and the drug safety in a way that a standard MBA or a generalist consultant cannot. So, while it's difficult to break down each and every consulting role or consulting path in this industry, because essentially across the entire drug's life cycle or the entire drug discovery and development phase, essentially every role you could master and gain experience and enter into consulting afterwards. But let's try and prioritize the most important and the most common roles or paths in this space. So the pharmaceutical and life sciences consulting is generally could be characterized into four primary pillars, each mapping to different stages of a drug's life cycle. So the first pillar that you could be working under is the commercial strategy and management consulting. So here you act as a high level business advisor to big pharma and biotech companies. The core objective is determining how to position a drug in the market to maximize the profit and reach patients effectively. You could be involved in new product planning or pipeline strategy or portfolio optimization. Here you would be advising companies on which molecules in their early stage pipeline are worth investing millions of dollars to advance further. You will assess the unmet clinical needs and the entire competitive landscape. Next, you could also be working in the brand and launch strategy, meaning that you would be designing the go to market strategy for a drug that may have just cleared the phase 3 trials. This involves deciding the target patient demographics, the physician messaging, and marketing channels. You could also be doing a competitive intelligence in depth, that is monitoring the competitive clinical trials and their corporate strategies to predict how their drug might disrupt your client's market share. The next major pillar is about the market access, pricing strategy, and reimbursement. So a drug can be a scientific success, scientific blockbuster, but if it fails to prove enough pharmacoeconomic value, then the insurance companies or governments may refuse to pay for it. So, market access consulting ensures that a drug gets covered on insurance formularies at a profitable price. So, this involves pricing and reimbursement strategy where you analyze the global healthcare structures like the Medicare or the Medicare in the US, the NHS in the UK, or insurance models in India and other countries to eventually recommend what a drug should actually cost. Then you could be working in HEO or consulting, which is the health economics and outcomes research space, in which you would be building economic models that prove a drug's value. For example, you might build a model demonstrating that a drug that's worth $1,000, it's actually worth paying for it because it prevents a $15,000 or $25,000 hospitalization. Then you could be involved in payer insights and engagement, where you could be interviewing the right stakeholders, such as the insurance medical directors, to understand what the clinical trial endpoints should be before they agree to cover a particular new therapy. Right? So it's just being able to foresee how you should design and conduct your clinical trial so that that feeds into as an evidence and it proves the worth of your particular drug. The third major space is the medical affairs and clinical consulting. So here you would be helping your pharma clients communicate complex scientific data to the medical community in an ethically and accurate way. So you could be doing the medical strategy consulting where you help a company decide how to educate the physicians about a rare disease or a novel therapeutic class ahead of a product launch, such as the mRNA vaccines or CAR T cell therapies. You could be involved in the key opinion leaders engagement strategy, where you identify the top researchers in a specific therapeutic area and design advisory boards to gather the clinical insights. Then you could be involved in medical communications and content strategy, that is, advising how to synthesize complex clinical data into more digestible scientific presentations or publications or medical training modules. The next major space, and the fourth and the last one, which I would want to highlight over here, is the regulatory, quality, and research and development operations. So here you would be focusing on navigating the strict guardrails imposed by the regulatory bodies across the globe, like the FDA, the EMA, or CDSCO, etc. Now, here you have to ensure that the drug development and post marketing monitoring complies with the regional regulatory law. So you would be doing the regulatory affairs consulting, where you are identifying the right strategies for the fastest, safest submission pathways for investigational new drugs and new drug applications. You could be doing pharmacovigilance and drug safety consulting, wherein you advise companies on how to optimize their adverse event reporting system, manage signal detection, and execute risk evaluation strategies post approval. You could be involved in clinical operations consulting, wherein you help the clients optimize clinical trial design, site selection, and patient recruitment strategy to reduce the overall time and cost of running a trial. So now, when you join a consulting firm, whether in a specialist life sciences firm like, let's say, IQVIA, ZS Associates, Clearview Healthcare Partners, Trinity Life Sciences, etc., or a healthcare division of a major firm like McKinsey, BCG, EY, or PwC, your path will typically follow a ladder, right? You begin with the entry level positions where your titles would be an associate or an analyst, and your typical roles and responsibility involve gathering the primary and secondary research data, conducting medical literature reviews, and executing financial or Excel data models. As you progress to the mid level roles, your titles would then become as consultant or a project leader. And now your day to day responsibilities involve managing the entire project workflows end to end, translating the scientific insights into corporate slide decks, and directly presenting your work to the clients. Then, as you progress to senior levels, your titles would be director, engagement manager, or partner, and your responsibility now is to lead the account growth, build relationships with the right stakeholders, that could be directors or vice presidents or other C-suite executives of the pharma companies, and then eventually secure new consulting contracts for the company. That is, bringing in the new business for the company becomes your responsibility. So essentially, as you might have understood, that this is a complex space, and no two projects that you would receive in the consulting space are ever same. So you're always working on something new, and that means it's a journey, it's an adventure, right? And this means that you are required to have good problem solving skills and to be able to do the right research, collect the right data, and perform data analytics, and make the right cohesive stories, and then eventually present them to your clients in order to solve their particular problems. So if this is the kind of role that interests you, then consulting may be the right space to venture into as a career opportunity.